Hi, I am Courtney Remillard. I am a 2D animator and comic book artist. I started comics actually long before I started animation. So what happened was I really liked the bridge between drawing and storytelling because primarily I think of myself as a storyteller. So I wanted to find a way that I could do kind of both at the same time. So that's where comic books came in and it kind of melded together. I just started from scratch and just went on when I was about 11 or 12. And I think I got like 45 pages into the first one. From there I realized I liked to do this. I could maybe start doing storyboarding, and that kind of led somewhere into animation. So I started school with the intention of coming out being a storyboard artist, but I came out being a pretty good animator. So Beware was a team production project we did as a group. It was myself, Ashanti Kyles, Kristen Brown, and Ariel Paxton. So we kind of piddled around some ideas, and we got the idea of a little witch traveling through the forest. She finds this magic staff she's looking for, but it's guarded by an ogre. So she summons her little slug puppy, thinking it's going to be this terrifying, spiky creature of death. And it's just a little bitty cute blue puppy thing that barks with a little high-pitched voice and hearts on its cheek. And her face drops. And she's just like, this is not what I signed up for. Well, the ogre laughs at her. And she's just defeated, wants to go home. Like, what was the point of all this? But the puppy sees her and he's like, well, I ain't having that. And he turns around and he grows those spikes and he becomes giant. And he eats the ogre. And it was amazing. And that project turned out really, really well. And it was just a lot of fun to do. It was a lot of work in the end, but we got a finished animation out of it. And I'm really proud of that. Characters walk a very fine line. They're people, they're just people living inside of our heads. So when you're creating a character, regardless of if they're a hero or a villain, kind of think about what personality they have and what motivation they have. And then from there you can start saying, okay, well, this character is very sinister, so let's think of them like a snake and give them kind of slender eyes or something like that, or like a thin face or a long nose. Versus like a hero, you would think, I'm a fun-loving rebel. So kind of give them like bright eyes and just a really energetic personality. So for me, it kind of comes down to how do I write them? And sometimes I learn about the character as I write them. So as I learn about them while I'm writing them, and I'm like, oh, hey, I've been writing this character for 5 years and I just learned something new about them. It's like, let me add this thing to maybe their design, or to just, there's that extra look in their eye that they never had before because they've suddenly realized something. So, and characters change over time because they're, like I said, they're just like people. So, when somebody goes through a lot of grief and it starts to show, like their eyes start sinking. So like those kinds of things can start to affect characters, good or bad. inspiration in creating a comic book, sometimes they fall along the same lines. Sometimes I've used a comic book page as the actual storyboards for an animation. So I will, sketch out my ideas. Because in comic books and animation, both are visual storytelling mediums. So you want to show that. You want to show instead of tell. So that's why you can have an animation with no words, and you can have a comic book with no words, and people can still tell what's going on. Which is what I think is both really challenging and also quite a lot of fun. So I'll start out with some sketches, and then I'll move into a storyboard, and then for comics it'll go into the page planning and inking and putting in the dialogue, and then for animation I've got to do my background, and then my rough animation, and then my final animation with all the line work and the color. Assassin's Creed is definitely one of those things that I love. It's not totally accurate to history, but it's pretty historically accurate for the most part, give or take. I have this Assassin's Creed costume. That was actually a Avengers Assassin's Creed crossplay. So my costume was meant to be Loki. So we had 3 people who ended up making our costumes. So we had Miss Marvel or Captain Marvel, we had Hawkeye, and we had Loki, and it was quite a bit of fun. Video games are those things. I've looked at the art. Kingdom Hearts was a huge influence on me, especially the second one, because it was kind of the one I started with. My original comic idea was my characters go into the world of these cartoon shows. They go into the Avatar world, they go into the Kingdom Hearts world, they go into Naruto's world, and had all these little side stories. It was basically a big fan fiction comic, and it's inspired by the fact that Sora goes to all these different worlds. Avatar: The Last Airbender was a massive influence because, one, of the style, and 2, the story, because there's always there's not good and evil. It's, a fine line, and people are doing things because they're people, and it was really creative, and I loved it once I got into it. And it also kind of the whole bending powers thing. So I have a lot of characters with magic that involves, I can control fire, I can control wind, I can control water, and it's a lot of fun to play with that stuff because visually those things are really fun. It's kind of hard to get them right, but they're fun. Inspirations come from everywhere. I started drawing because I picked up Naruto. And that was that thing because I loved the style. It didn't look like a classic anime style. It didn't look like the shoujo girls with the giant eyes. They looked very realistic for, manga characters. And that was one of those things that inspired me to start drawing comics, is I can tell a story like this, and I love how this is drawn. And it helped me get better because the best way to get better is through imitation. So I imitated the style, and it kind of reflects in my style now. It's deviated quite a bit, but you can still see it. So that was definitely one of my big inspirations for a really long time. A lot of Disney movies I like to watch, but I wouldn't necessarily call them inspiration. I loved them so much, and I love the DreamWorks movies and just things. But I do more often draw my inspiration from other artists, as far as comic books, and as far as animation. There's artists on DeviantArt who help influence how I draw and how I animate. There's, even our teachers, One teacher is always talking about the shapes of the characters. He said make each character have a different silhouette, and that's something that once it clicked. And I was like, oh, that's how that works, that's why that works, and that's why he's, pushing us so hard to do it. I'm not entirely sure what the future holds. There's all kinds of paths I could take. At this point, I'm kind of just gonna apply for jobs and go where the river takes me. I think what I would call one of my dream jobs is working at Mercury Filmworks, which is in Ottawa, in Canada. One place I really want to go and live for ever, because it's so nice and not hot up there. But they animate a lot of Disney XD cartoons. They've animated Wander Over Yonder, Star versus the Forces of Evil, which is one of my favorite things on TV right now. They do the Lion Guard. They're doing a Tangled 2D animated series coming up. And I'm so excited for that because I love Tangled. It's like my favorite movie. So that would be a really cool place to work. Nickelodeon's hiring right now, and I'm very interested in applying to work for them because that was when I first started school. I want to work for Nickelodeon. I don't want to work for Disney. I want to work for Nickelodeon. So that would be a lot of fun. I don't think I'm gonna close myself off to working anywhere because I know that like Bento Box and Floyd County are in Atlanta, which is nice, but at the same time I'm kind of like, I would like to get out of the South. The other thing is the river might take me into comics, which would be amazing. I've been working on an internship for the last 10 or 11 months with Dean Mater, who does the Mr. X comics, working on toning pages for a graphic novel for a client. But he wants to hire me on as his colorist for the next set of Mr. X issues. So I get paid to color comics. So and he's a really good connection to have, and he's a really nice guy. I saw him at DragonCon, and I've been working with him for the last few months, so it'd be fun to work with him some more. You know, build your network. Any new young animation students, I would definitely say really good at drawing. You don't have to draw realistically, you don't have to draw amazingly, but get good at drawing quickly, at drawing consistently, and at drawing things that, you know, look right. Don't have things that are all over the place. Don't be afraid to completely mess up a character. I mean, when you're animating, you can do whatever the heck you want, so have fun with it. What I find is that a lot of new animators are scared to push it to the limits, you know? Just make it squash a little more, make it stretch a little more, you know? Make it just a little bit more of a pancake. Stretch their eyes out, do some funky stuff with it because you're gonna have a lot more fun because it's gonna be a really funny looking frame and it's gonna end up looking a lot better in the end.